What do you make of today, Anthony? Did you think this day would ever come? What do you make of it all?
Well, I mean, there was such an avalanche of allegations that it would be impossible to say that the day could never come, despite the fact that the president was pretty good in terms of his Teflon, in terms of being able to shake things off and not having anything ever stick to him. But I am going to maintain, and we'll have to see ultimately what the Liz pendants of complaints, criminal complaints are against the president. But I maintain that it's got to be impossible for this just to be about Stormy Daniels and the other Playboy model. It has to be way more significant than that. And, for Trump supporters, of course, it'll never be enough. As he said, he could shoot people on Fifth Avenue. They wouldn't care. They would still support him. But I do think that there's a line between the rule of law in the United States, politicizing the rule of law and using the law to persecute political adversaries, and then going across the line. And I'm going to maintain that Alvin Bragg is not stupid. He has to have some mind-blowing smoking gun allegations that he's going to put forth here in the next 24 hours. Because if he doesn't, this will backfire on him, and it'll only make Donald Trump stronger to his base.
And that is the key question, is it not? I mean, what do you think this is ultimately going to do for Donald Trump's bid to get that Republican nomination? I mean, it is the Donald Trump show again. It looks like many of his, opponents, including Ron DeSantis, have been like, "Yeah, we back Donald Trump." Does this mean he's got the nomination in the bag?
So I'm going to be a little bit contrarian. I think what Sarah was saying is true. It does strengthen him with his base. But I think he has a further avalanche, a sort of like, that rolling ball in Indiana Jones coming for him. He's got the potential indictment in Georgia. It looks very clear based on all indications that he's going to be indicted there. He's got the issue related to the January 6th insurrection and what his involvement is there. There is some people suggesting there's a smoking gun around his involvement prior to, again, on the 4th and 5th of January, not just on the 6th of January. So if you've got 5 or 6 of these allegations happening at the same time, I know this sounds crazy to Trump supporters and to the political theater of all this. He may pull out of the race. He may fake a health injury or something like that and say, I've got to pull out of the race, because people can say whatever they want, but these legal cases are incredibly distracting. Nobody likes to get arrested. Nobody likes to get fingerprinted. And nobody likes to have the full force of the state against their personhood as a citizen of that state. So, you've got in my opinion, better than even chance that he drops out of the race, and he does it in a way that actually surprises people. Because it just may not be possible to get all this done, given the uncertainty about the legality of his future.
Wow, that's a really interesting view. Kate Ferguson is with us from The Sun on Sunday, one of our big tabloid papers. Kate, do you have anything you'd like to put to Anthony, a.k.a. the Mooch?
Hi, Anthony. Nice to be with you this evening. Or evening for us.
I love reading the tabloids, Kate. I just don't like being the subject of the tabloids.
Never
I can see your sound engineers laughing at that as well.
Never
okay,
a truer
trust me,
word
they don't want to
said.
be. They don't want to be a subject either.
I found it really interesting what you were just saying about the possibility of Trump actually pulling out the race in the end because of the pressure of these charges against him. I wonder what's happening at the moment with the US in terms of those all-important independent votes, or we would say in the UK, floating voters. Are they annoyed that people are going after Trump so hard, or is this actually playing against Trump with those all-important voters? How are they reacting?
So again, I can only offer you my opinion. It's 41% of the electorate now. The smallest registration is for the Republicans. Democrats are like 31. Republicans are in the 20s. The 41% of the independent voters, I think they just want better candidates. They're less concerned about left and right, and they're more concerned about right or wrong for the country. And so Donald Trump doesn't really fit into that box, if you will, because there's too much hair on Mr. Trump. There's too much theatrics and baggage associated with his personality. There are better messengers for the movement of the Republican Party, and there are better leaders. I don't want Mr. Trump to go down on charges related to Stormy Daniels or a Playboy model. I don't think that's a significant enough crime. Yes, it is a crime. I understand all the distinctions, but he is the American president, and I think it leads to a very bad precedent if that's all there is. If there's more to it, we'll have to see. But listen, independent voters looking at all that stuff and all that nonsense, they would rather just have a more normalized candidate with better policies, pro-growth policies helpful to improving what's going on in the country right now. It's a very split country, very tribal country, which is why we've got so many independents.
Anthony, I just want to introduce you to Rachel Cunliffe, who is from one of our most successful political magazines, a weekly political magazine. Rachel, your question for Anthony.
Hi, Anthony. Lovely to talk to you.
Same here.
You worked with Trump firsthand. You've got experience of him and his attitude and his emotions. What's his mindset right now? What do you think his game plan is?
Well, I can only surmise, but I think he started out, frankly, fear-based. I've seen this in action before with him. Again, I worked in the White House for a short period of time, 11 days, but I was on the campaign for a year, and I did 71 campaign stops with him. He is way more calculated, and he's way less impetuous than people actually think. And so I think he's going through the shock and anger of being indicted, and I think it's converting now into that counterpunching and the resilience quotient that's in his personality. And of course, whether you like him or dislike him, he's very good at the political theater, and he's very good at coming up with a narrative that his base will fully support. So I imagine he's going to be low key here in New York until he returns back to Mar-a-Lago. And then I think you're going to see the defiant version of Donald Trump, one that's going to try to generate fundraising on his behalf and support from his base. So he does not like being arrested, though. Anybody that tells you, oh, Trump is super happy, this is going to help him get elected, he's smart enough to know that that's not going to help him get elected. And he's smart enough to know that getting arrested is not a cool thing. Let's just talk about it for exactly what it is. You're arrested, fingerprinted, and mugshot. That is a bad day for a person, no matter who you are.
And just on that, because I think you make a really interesting point, and it's great to have you on because you're giving us a bit of a counter narrative, because there is a bit of a view that, oh, he'll think this is really cool. And do you think he'll feel ashamed in any way?
Well, shame is probably not in his DNA. Okay, when you go to like the chromosomal Trump, I don't think he has any shame in his genetic makeup. So I don't think he feels shame, but I do think he feels, the weight of the government. I don't know anybody. Listen, I've been a witness in court cases, federal cases, et cetera. And just as a witness, not even a target, the whole system and the idea that you could potentially lose your freedom is daunting. Now, I do agree with your other guests. The likelihood of him losing his freedom, having to go to prison, I think is very slim and perhaps even impossible, given the way the Secret Service has to guard him. But the truth be told, shame, that's not in Mr. Trump's game. No way.
Now, we've just seen some footage of Donald Trump in the courthouse, very grim set jawed. He's not smiling. He's looking.
Oh, how could he?
Yeah, he's looking pretty angry there. And listen, Anthony, if you were advising him, if you were working for him now, how would you manage him over this period of time? Because there's a lot of pressure on him. Everyone's going to be scrutinizing everything. What would you say to him? What would your advice be? And also, how should he conduct himself as well?
Well, let me just provide some straight talk to your viewers. He is unmanageable. You just had John. You just had John Bolton on. Ask John. He's unmanageable. You could ask General Kelly, H.R. McMaster. There's only one way to convince Trump to do something. That was when you explain to him that if he doesn't act in the way you're directing, it's going to damage him, meaning it's going to create havoc for him. That took place with me and him in July of 2017. He didn't want to sign the Russian sanctions bill, and I pleaded with him to do it because Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan would have gone to their Democratic opposition and got the votes necessary to override his veto. and that would have been emasculating to him at that early part of his presidency. So that was the only time in the year that I worked with him that I convinced him to do something that he really did not want to do, because he saw that it was completely against his interests to go in the direction he was going in. But he is not manageable. My advice to him here, he would never take. And my advice to him is that his political moment has passed. He's about to turn 77. Whatever he thinks of his legacy, it's very unlikely that he's going to win the presidency again. There's so many different reasons for that, but the main one is his unfavorability. He is roundly disliked by a very broad set of the American people.
Now, Anthony, just got two quick questions before I let you go. You said, look, you don't think he is the best messenger for the Republican Party. Who do you think the best messenger would be? Who would you like to see lead the Republicans?
I would choose you, although I don't think you are a U.S. citizen. I mean, these guys are a bunch of jokers. You know that, and I know that. They're all going to say roughly the same thing. They're going to listen to the political consultants. And again, they're going to speak to their bases and be very tribal. The country needs a post-partisan candidate, a transformational political figure that's going to focus on the first name of the country, which is united. We got to get this country back together. We've got to create unity, and in unity there's compromise, and I don't see anybody in the field that's willing to do that.
Because you know what this means.
They like power more than they like doing the right thing. You guys know that.
I think sometimes men are born great, some have greatness thrust upon them. Mooch, you've got to stand, you've got to throw your hat in the ring. Clearly there's only one man for the job.
Ladies, I'm running for re-election in my marriage, okay? I could be on like a one-day term, and I may even have term limits on that. You got to be careful.
But listen, Speaking of marriages, final question to you. How do you think Melania is dealing with all of this?
Well, I don't like talking about the family, to be honest, because they've always been good to me. I like her. She's a very down-to-earth person. I think they probably have a little bit of a working relationship, frankly. And I think the family has made a decision that they want to stay out of the political theater. So while they want to offer him support, they don't want to be standing next to him, because I think they've grown tired of the whole political game. That's another reason why Donald Trump could come out of this race. His family does not want to be as actively involved this time like they were in 2016.
Well, Anthony, what a pleasure to have you join us on the show
great.
On this historic.
Great to be on.
And listen, you can come and visit us anytime. The Mooch is always welcome on Times Radio.
I look forward to it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys having me.
That was Anthony Scaramucci, the one, the only Anthony Scaramucci, former White House Director of Comms. Rachel, what do you think?
It's fascinating, isn't it? I thought his point that actually this doesn't look good for Trump long term, and in fact with all the other possible legal battles that he's facing, you might see him drop out, say he's feign an injury, he said, feign some kind of excuse, save face, and then drop out, because to do so would be less humiliating and less damaging to his future prospects than running and losing and going through all of that. I don't think I've heard anyone really suggest that that's a possibility.
That really stood out to me, because that's so counterintuitive to the narrative we're being fed, Kate.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all buckling in, aren't we, for a rerun of the last contest, Biden versus Trump. So the idea that Trump could actually take a step back from that is fascinating. The other thing I thought was interesting that he said was that the time now is for a new kind of leader. We need to bring the united back into United States. It's such a country at war. We've seen such division here in the UK in recent years, but it's clear, isn't it, that in the US it's that times 1,000. And the question really is there anybody coming through the Republican ranks who can provide that kind of leadership?
I think Mooch should stand. I think he'd be great.
He charged me. That's
he suggested you.
Ladies, I stand ready. Can you imagine? I stand ready. He's very charming. We were all like, we were all rather beguiled by him.
I thought the line about running for re-election in his marriage was a good line. I wonder how many times he's used it before, but it did make me laugh.
It did.